The battle itself was brisk and bloody. The fire was concentrated on Sydney's bridge, which very, very quickly appears to have knocked out her command and control, obviously on Sydney's main armament and secondary weapons, and it wasn't long before Cormoran was also able to torpedo Sydney, which proved to be the death knell for the ship, albeit, some hours later. The Cormoran certainly didn't get it all its own way. Sydney did its duty, it responded. They scored critical hits on the Cormoran, which then forced Captain Detmers to abandon his ship and scuttle it later on that evening. Sadly, the crew of Sydney perished, 645 men. That included 6 members of the Royal Australian Air Force, 4 civilian canteen staff, and a number of officers and sailors from the Royal Navy. The ship was last seen quite late in the evening, burning on the horizon, and then it vanished, at which time it was seen no more.
Based upon the DNA evidence that we've obtained, which is both the mitochondrial DNA from the female side of the family and the Y chromosome DNA from the male side of the family, the unknown sailor is able seaman Thomas Wellesby Clark, born in Brisbane in 1920, who enlisted in the Royal Australian Navy in 1940. He'd only been on board Sydney 2.5 months when he was killed. It's been a very long journey since 2008, trying to track down relatives of the unknown sailor, and it's a fantastic feeling to finally give this man back his name. Obviously, there's been the scientists who've extracted the DNA, both at the Australian Centre for Ancient DNA and at the Australian Federal Police. That's a key activity. We've also used genealogists to build family trees. I've had interested historians who have tracked down family members.
Well, to be quite honest, I think it was a bit upsetting because I'll never erase the memory I have of him in that lifeboat at the scene of the battle still, and then drifting for almost 3 months, exposed, the body, of course, exposed to the elements and the seabirds. So a bit distressing, really. The truth is the main thing, and I'm so grateful for the many, many people, well over 100, who helped ascertain the truth about his identity. All the Reillies who came and gave their DNA, and then the forensic pathologists who examined the remains, geneticists, my half-brother Colin, who gave the mitochondrial and Y chromosome DNA, which clinched the result. I'm so grateful to all of them and glad the truth was found out. 1941, I was born in July, and Tom must have had some leave, I think, because he was in Brisbane then, where I lived, and he came and held me as a little baby. So that's a very pleasurable thought, because I don't think anyone else is alive now who knew Tom sort of eye to eye. When he was in Brisbane for that short leave before he joined the Sydney, he became engaged to a Brisbane girl called Anne Chandler, and I'll always remember that. It's amazing the things you remember.
Picture of Tom, which is a striking picture of a very handsome young man as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, he is, isn't he?
This depicts him when he was serving HMAS Rushcutter, and this is where they did the same sort of association with, chasing the great white whale. Let's find these submarines and harpoon them and get rid of that threat. So it was really common when they passed their training and had this portrait taken, and that would have became, and it clearly did, something that was treasured by the family. So, and that's him there. And one of the things that was really interesting throughout the forensic work, again championed by Greg, You know, when you look at Tom in life, you know, he certainly exhibits those characteristics. So that was one of the very first things that got Greg excited. Over to you.
Yeah, so we've spent a long time trying to find called the Y chromosome, or the male side of the family's DNA, and that's when I got in contact with
activities, and it had already sunk 10 merchant ship, taking an 11th as a prize, and she had 360 sea mines that her intention was to sow them.
Six-inch guns, 8 of them, fore and aft. And they were pretty much state-of-the-art. They were not junk. They were not sort of British cast-offs by any means. They were as good as you could buy. And the Navy...
6 cruisers, 2 sloops, 5 destroyers, and a handful of support vessels. Unbalanced force, supported by a minuscule supply organization and inadequate shipbuilding capacity. Sufficient, though barely, for the local defense of Australian sea lines of communication.
Provide a triumphant return to Alexandria. Cunningham had given a general signal, and every warship in harbour would clear lower deck in their honour.
Leaving 3 of his destroyers to rescue Italian survivors,
I was thrilled to have them, absolutely thrilled to have them after the grim years of the Depression.
HMAS Sydney has been in action with a heavily armed enemy merchant raider, which she sank by gunfire. The intimation was received from survivors from the enemy vessel, who were picked up sometime after the action. No subsequent communication has been received from HMAS Sydney, and the government regrets that she must be presumed lost.
HMAS Sydney, the nation's most famous warship and pride of the RAN, who for 7 months had run the gauntlet of the Mediterranean, had fought off more than 60 Axis air attacks, had led the cruiser Vanguard at the Battle of Calabria, and sunk the Bartolomeo Colleone at Cape Spada, who had steamed 80,000 miles and fired 4,000 rounds in battle in less than 2 years without the loss of a single life, had somehow, inexplicably, been destroyed off West Australia by a Phantom. And of her 645-strong crew, not one man was left alive.